that we're going to discuss now two of the tribes that are remaining that we still didn't talk about their bracha, about their blessing that they got from Yaakov Avinu, and their role in the Jewish people. The role of these two tribes is very, very great, very, very pronounced, very, very profound. So what is their role? First of all, we're talking about Binyamin and Yosef, right? Yosef and Binyamin. And these were the two sons of Rachel, right? These were the only two sons that she had. She didn't have any other children because she was barren for a long time. And once she had the miracle of having children, she only managed to have two before she died. As you know, right? Yes, during the childbirth of Binyamin, she died during the childbirth there, during the labor pains. She died over there. So we have to know, right, that these two tribes are very, very special. So what's the reason why? First of all, in order to understand that, you have to understand that their mother was very special. What does that mean? That she was the main wife of Yaakov Avinu. Number one, right? What does that mean, main wife? She was the one who was... I'm sorry?
He liked her best.
That's for sure, yeah, that's for sure. He liked her, he liked her the best, but most of all. But besides the fact that he liked her, she was the one who was basically running the house. She was like, the mistress of the home,
Not Leah?
No, not Leah. And she was the one that was regularly with Yaakov. In other words, Yaakov was usually with her. As a rule, on any given night or whatever, he was with her more than the other wives. The other wives were just like basically tagging along, basically, whatever.
He had 7 children.
Yes, 6 children. Yes, 7 daughter, right, yes, absolutely. So, what happened was that this lady, Rachel, she was very, very special. What's the special thing about her? They say that Rachel was the epitome of holiness. She was a very holy lady. She had prophecy as well. And also did Leah, by the way. Leah also had prophecy. So our two big mothers that we come from them, they were both prophets. This is a very great level. Can you imagine? So a woman can also get prophecy. Not only a man. That's one thing that, we don't discriminate against the ladies. They can also get.
Rahel was better looking. Speak for himself. And Jacob loved him more.
Yes, that's interesting, this whole thing about the looks. We discussed that actually when we were talking about the marriage of the Yaakov with the wives. We discussed about that, but we're not really going to talk so much about that right now. We're going to talk more about the children, because they were the ones with the tribes. So we say, right, that Rachel, she was the epitome of holiness. And because of that, her children were just like her, basically. What does that mean? That they were the seat of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence, these two sons. They were very, very much in touch with the holiness. And that's why they're both called, right, Binyamin and Yosef, they're called tzaddikim. What does that mean, tzaddikim? Righteous people, right? But, they were all righteous. But these two were especially, on a high level of righteousness, high level of holiness. They say, by the way, about Binyamin, that he never sinned all his life, right? The Chazal say. He was the only one of the tribes who never did any sin. He was totally sinless when he died. So he was actually very special because of that reason as well. But Yosef HaTzadik, there's a difference, right? According to Kabbalah, Yosef HaTzadik is called the Tzadik Elyon. You know what that means? The upper Tzadik, the one who's high. Binyamin is called the Tzadik Tachton, the lower one. So what does that mean, right? What difference is if you're up, down, whatever, you're up there, you're down here. What does all this mean? So it means like this, right? That Yosef HaTzadik was a person who was not really so much in this world. He was like kind of removed from the world and concentrating on the upper spheres more. He was a person who was totally like, in solitude. They say, by the way, that even though he was running the kingdom in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, there was like a certain point where he actually stopped being personally involved in that process, and he just like went into solitude, being why? Because he wanted to get close with God. So he didn't want, because when you were in the kingdom, which is like a very earthly thing, a very materialistic thing, you can't really get close to God so much. So he wanted to get on a higher level, so therefore he separated from that, and he let other people run that, and he himself, right, went and separated himself, and was in isolation to get closer to God. So Yosef HaTzadik, we're talking about a person who basically, this is a man who never sins, Yosef HaTzadik, all the descendants, by the way, of Yosef, they have this great holiness. Right, Yosef HaTzadik. And Binyamin is also tzaddik, but his role is more on the earth. What does that mean? He's not the kind of person who is in the heavenly spheres. He's down here. What does that mean? He's down here doing the will of God over here in the world. What does that mean? To teach Torah, to be a Torah teacher. Right? Many of the great Torah scholars that we had in Am Yisrael came from Shevet Binyamin, came from this tribe of Binyamin. The heads of the Sanhedrin, and they say, right, that many of the Rosh Yeshivas also, the heads of the Yeshivot are also from this tribe. So this is considered to be like one of the great Torah tribes, Shevet Binyamin, as well, right? As opposed to Yosef. Now, Yosef, right, also has the Bechina of the concept of Malchut, right? There's a kingdom over there. So what does that mean? That many kings came from Yosef, and Mashiach ben Yosef is also going to come from him. So it's a tribe that also produces many, many kings. And also they say, by the way, Zohar Kadosh says that Binyamin also produced kings. Meaning what? That there's also element of kingdom in Binyamin as well. And that's why the first king in Am Yisrael was from Binyamin, right? Who was that? Shaul. Yes. So why?
Benjamin had sons before Joseph?
What does that mean before Joseph?
Well, Benjamin was much younger than Joseph.
Well, actually, they were born, pretty much in the same period. This is pretty close by. So, but yeah, but anyway, Binyamin was down here, and he was. In other words, he has the role of being a mover and shaker in the Torah world. And here, in order to train people in Torah, to teach people Torah, to be a leader, to be on the earthly kingdom more, but also very, very righteous. Binyamin the Tzaddik, he never sinned, he never committed any sin. So these two tribes are very, very special, but they're even more special during certain times. What does that mean? That the tribe of Yehuda, as we know, right, has the Malchut, the kingdom, forever. It's like something which never ceases. But the kings that come from Yosef and Binyamin, it's only something like temporary more. They don't have the Malchut, they don't have the kingdom on a permanent basis. They have it like at certain periods. What kind of periods are we talking about, right? They say that the periods where these two tribes are more active, their role is more active, is in the Galut, in the exile. What does that mean? That they flourish, these two tribes, more in the exile. As opposed to the sons of Leah, that they flourish in Eretz Israel very, very well. But in the exile, they don't do so well like the sons of Yosef, in a general manner. Why is that, by the way? The sons of Yosef, the sons of Binyamin. Because these two, they are like the epitome of the Shekhinah. They're totally connected to the Shekhinah. And in the Galut, in the exile, the Shekhinah is not so strong. It's very weak and diluted and dilapidated. That's what it is. It's a very weak form of the Shekhinah. And that's why the Zohar Kadosh says that in the diaspora, you can't really get like a full-fledged holiness here. You can't really get to a level. This is we discussed this before, right? We talked about this. It's not really possible. So, it's meaning what? That the structure, the spiritual structure of how it exists over here in the diaspora, outside of Eretz Israel, is that you can't really achieve a high level of holiness. So therefore, this is the reason why the sons of Rachel, Leah and Binyamin, those two tribes, they flourish in the diaspora. Why is that? Because they are the magnet of holiness. They're the ones who attract the holiness on their bodies, on their souls, and therefore they're the ones who can overcome the darkness of the galut, of the exile. They're the ones who can do that better than anybody else. This is the reason why, right? They tend to be always the leaders in the time of exile. So what happened, right? That the first king, as we said, right, came from a tribe of Binyamin. So the first king was Shaul. What was the reason, by the way, why the Shevet Binyamin, the tribe of Binyamin, got the first king? It should have been from Yehuda, no, the first king. Yeah. He was the main king. So why all of a sudden, how did Binyamin get into this whole picture? He jumped in, in front of everybody. This is like, chutzpah, it's like arrogant, whatever. You jump, and Binyamin was what? The youngest of the tribes. You understand? So how is it that the youngest of the tribes becomes the king first? Very unusual, very strange. So they say, right, that this was according to something that happened in the desert when they left Egypt and they went into the desert. They had to cross the Red Sea. That was one of the big challenges that they had, right? They had to cross over. So Kadosh Baruch Hu split the sea for them. They crossed over, but in order to split the sea, there was actually a big issue there. There was a big problem. What was the problem over there? The problem was that they needed a miracle. Obviously, this was not something, that comes from nature, this kind of thing. To split a sea is not something that you can do naturally. So a miracle requires a certain amount of merit. So what happened was that during the time that they were trying to cross over the sea, the Egyptians were forcing them to move. They had nowhere to go. Egyptians on this side and the sea on this side. There's nowhere to go but to go into the sea. So therefore, in order to get this miracle, there had to be a certain merit. Because miracles don't happen for nothing. Just because you wave your hands. It's not because Moshe Rabbeinu waved his hands. That's not the reason why the miracle happened. That's just a symbol. So what really had to happen? It had to be, by the way, they say that when two nations are coming together for battle, so here we had Mitzrayim, we had Egypt, and we had on the other side we had the Jews. So what happens is that who wins the battle? The one that has the most merits. So what they do is they conduct some kind of a court upstairs during the time that the battle ensues, is about to start, and what they do is they judge to see which nation is more righteous. And that's the nation that wins. That's how wars are conducted. So this war as well was conducted in the same way. They think, by the way, people today, nowadays, they think it's only the weapons, they have planes, they have tanks, they have missiles. So if we have all these big weapons, we're for sure going to win the war, right? So it's not right. There's no guarantee you're going to win any war. Just because you have advanced weaponry and you have systems and all kinds of issues and satellites and this and all these things, doesn't mean anything. So what happened was that they were being judged above to see if they had the merit to split the sea. So what happened was that there had to be somebody to make like a catalyzer to make this thing happen. What does that mean? That somebody had to jump in actually, while the water was still not split. Just jump in there. And they say, okay, you know what, God, you have to split the sea. I'm jumping in. That's what happened, you understand? So they say, there's several midrashim about that. Yes, I'm sorry, yes. So there's several midrashim about this, and they say that the first ones to jump in were from the tribe of Binyamin. You understand? Why? Because they had such great level of emunah, faith in Hashem, they were not afraid. They were like the ones, they just go for it. Charge ahead, charge all the way through. So what they did was they jumped into the water, and because of that, the water then split. Somebody had to do that. There's another one. I know there's another opinion, but according to this opinion, right? I know what you're going to say. So what I'm saying is like this, right? That they jumped in. Once they jumped in, the water split. So there had to be somebody to be that catalyzer. That radical guy. The zealot. Kind of person who goes and just goes. No limits. Not scared. No reservations. So what happened was that once the other tribes saw that Binyamin jumped in first, they got jealous of them, So what happened was that they started to throw stones at them, Can you imagine? Stone them. Like, who are you to jump in first? You're the youngest of the tribes. We're the ones supposed to be doing that. Yehuda, all the other tribes, They were the ones. So they started to stone them. Throw stones. What are you doing jumping in the water? Who are you? Little kid, Little tyke. You're the tykes. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So therefore what happened was that even though they were stoned and everything, and all this happened, but they were the ones who jumped in the first, and therefore Kadosh Baruch Hu said, since you jump in first into the water, when the water hasn't split yet, so therefore the first king will come from you. That was the reward that they got because they jumped in first. Yeah. No, what I mean to say is that Binyamin was the youngest tribe. So they shouldn't be the ones who are leading the Jews, That's born in that tribe does not mean that he's younger than all the rest. No, see, there's also, you're right, but what I'm saying is that since they're the youngest tribe, there's also an issue there, That in other words, that has significance, that the fact that they're younger. The older tribe is supposed to be the one who does these things, not they're supposed to be the leaders. In Judaism, there's a hierarchy, right? The hierarchy goes according to age, in many things. So therefore, here also, we had this hierarchy, but Binyamin was not afraid of anything, they just jumped in, and therefore Kadosh Baruch Hu said, you're going to be the first king. So Shaul was the first king. So what they say, by the way, is interesting, right? That Shaul was the first king.
He was the son of Benjamin?
Yes, he was descended from Binyamin. So, and then what happened was that this started the Malchut, this started the kingdom. And then when the kingdom ended, after the first temple was destroyed, again we had a leader from Binyamin. Who was that? This was Mordechai, right? Mordechai was from Shevet Binyamin also, even though from his mother's side he was from Judah. But what happened was that he got the kingdom. He became like a king over there in Persia. He took the the second place over there with Achashverosh. So they say that just like Binyamin started, he also ended. He got both sides. The beginning of the kingdom and also the end of the kingdom. He got both sides. So you see from there, it's alluded to in the verses also that they got both sides of the thing. So what does that mean? That when they were in exile in Persia, so there the leader was from Binyamin. Why? Because the sons of Rachel, they're more fit to lead the Jews in the exile. So this is the importance of the tribe of Binyamin and Yosef, that they are the ones, because they attract the Shekhinah and they're very holy, so therefore they can overcome the darkness of the exile. They don't feel the darkness of the exile. They can just rip right through it. They don't have any limitations. But when it comes to the other tribes, they're more affected by the exile. They're more they cannot really push so hard in the exile. They're not so, and this is the reason why many of the great leaders in the exile were from these tribes. Also, there's another thing, right, that we have to know, that Binyamin and Yosef, they say the Chazal that they have a special quality, which is what? They're the only tribes really, that can defeat the forces of Esav. Because the forces of Esav have to be defeated in order that Mashiach should come. Right? They say that until the kingdom of Esav is still existent, Mashiach cannot come. Why is that? Because they are the epitome of unholiness, of impurity. So therefore Mashiach cannot be there at that time until they are defeated and destroyed. So that's the only way, right? The Mashiach only comes on the ashes of that kingdom. What does that mean? Especially Amalek, right? Amalek, who comes from Esav, right? Who was Amalek? Amalek was the grandson of Esav. So this is the arch enemy of the Jewish people, the one who kills the Jews, right? We know who they are, the Nazis and all these people, the skinheads. These people, they're the Amalek. They're the Amalek of every generation. Every generation has Amalek. So what happens is that these people, the only ones that are really able to defeat them in a very final manner is these two tribes, Yosef and Binyamin. They're the ones who can knock them out. They have a special merit for that. So we have to explain, by the way, what that merit comes from, because it's actually kind of a deep concept, this whole thing. Why is it that they have the merit to do so? So if I
The Lexus 5162 over there next door. Park somebody next door. No?
So what I'm telling you is that they have the special power to do this. So we have to understand what that means. Why is that? Why is it the other tribes cannot really defeat the forces of Esav in a final manner, in a convincing manner, in a lasting manner? They cannot. Only the tribes of Yosef and Binyamin can do that. So we have to understand, right, that the Chazal tell us that there is some kind of a mechanism that works in Shemayim, in the heavens. What is the mechanism? It works like this, right? That the brothers of Yosef HaTzadik, right, all of them, the ones that sold Yosef, the ones that sold him, so they have like a stain on their record. When a person gets a rap sheet, it's very hard to get rid of that, you know what I mean? So the tribes, they all have a rap sheet. You understand? Because they sold Yosef. That rap sheet goes forever. Until Mashiach comes. It's like they're blacklisted. You understand? That's what it is. Yeah, we all suffer, by the way. Every generation we suffer for that. For the sale of Yosef. We get punished. Probably not them, but we all suffer. In a general sense, we all suffer. The whole Jewish people suffer because of that. In every generation we suffer, we get punished for that. For the sale of Yosef. So they say that what? That obviously, right, Binyamin, he didn't have a share in that, right? He didn't sell Yosef. He wasn't involved in that. He wouldn't sell his own blood brother from his mother's side. He wouldn't do that. So really it was only the 10 tribes that sold him. The rest of Binyamin was not involved. Yosef was the one who was sold. So what happens is like this, right? That comes the measure of justice in this world. In order to defeat Esav, you know what we ask Esav, right? In the heavenly court. We say, why are you so wicked? Why do you chase after your brother Yaakov? Why do you want to kill the Jews all the time? You know how many Jews have been killed by Esav? Millions and millions and millions and millions of Jews. You can't even count them. All of Europe is stained with the blood of the Jews. with those righteous people, those people over there, they call themselves righteous. They slaughter Jews like chickens over there in Europe. That's what they did. And now they come and they have
slaughtered everybody.
Jews especially. You understand? They slaughtered everybody. That's
What are we talking about? 60 million people.
We were their favorite target. You understand? We're not talking about, by the way, only World War II. We're talking about for 2,000 years they've been killing Jews.
No.
You understand?
So, do you think that the Bible or God would have an explanation for 60 million people perishing in a war?
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that when you have one nation which is always singled out, that's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. They single out the Jews because they hate the Jews, and it's a hatred that lasts forever. They can come to you by and say, we love you, we love Israel, it's all fake. They don't love Israel, they hate Israel. That's the truth. But when they need to love you, they love you. When they don't need to love you, they can stab you in the back also. Everything happens. So what I'm telling you is that the Jews have so much suffered in the hands of Esav. So, the measure of justice will come in the end. And ask Esav, why did you chase after your brother all this time? For thousands of years you've been killing the Jews. For what? What's the reason? Why do you pursue your brother? Why do you hate him so much? So you know what the answer of Esav will be, right? The answer of Esav will be, yeah, but I'm not any worse than them. They also sold Yosef, they pursued after Yosef. So I'm not any worse. What do you want from me? Okay? You understand? So therefore, this is what prevents the downfall of Esav, because he has this answer. Always this answer comes up. That what? Oh, they also chased after Yosef, Well, they're not any better than me. I chased after Yaakov. They chased after Yosef. Not any better than me. But the thing is like this, right? That what? That when it comes to Yosef and Binyamin, there is no claim like that. Why? Because they didn't do anything to Yosef, either one of them. So therefore, they have the power to defeat Esav. Because that answer of Esav doesn't apply to them. You understand? This is the reason why. So the measure of justice doesn't allow that answer to come up with them, obviously. It's obvious, it's an obvious equation. So therefore, this is the reason why they are the ones who have the ultimate power to defeat Esav. This is the reason why. And therefore, tells the Chazal that before the kingdom of Malchut Bet David, of the kingdom of David is established, first will come the sons of Esav, the sons of Rachel, Binyamin and Yosef, and wipe out the forces of Esav. What does that mean? That Mashiach ben Yosef will make a war against them, and they will go together, and defeat them. That's what will happen. This is what's on the itinerary. So these two tribes, in that sense, are very, very special. But besides that, there's also something else, right, which is very special about them. That what? Because they are so holy, these two tribes. So therefore, all the temples that existed in the Jewish people throughout the history were in their territory. You understand? They were always in their territory. What does that mean? That most of the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, right, was still in the territory of Binyamin. There were some parts also in Yehuda, but most of it was in Binyamin. So, why is that? Because Binyamin was so holy, he was attracted to Shekhinah, he attracted the divine presence, so therefore he deserved that the divine presence of the temple should dwell on his, right, between his shoulders. That's what it says in the verse, right? But what does that mean? On his head, right? On the top of Binyamin. What is the top of Binyamin? The land of Binyamin, the highest point, right? They say there's two high points over there, but the one with the second highest is what? The Temple Mount. And that's where they built the Beit HaMikdash. Why didn't they pick the first one? There's also one point they say is even higher than that. It's called, I think, En Etam. There's a place called En Etam, and that place is supposed to be higher than the Temple Mount. So if that's the case, why did they build the Beit HaMikdash on the second highest place in the territory of Binyamin? So they say the reason is because it says, right, the verse says, when we talk about the blessing of Binyamin, what does it say over there? That it dwells between his shoulders, the Shekhinah. So what does that mean? Not on the head, which is the highest point of the body, on the shoulders, second highest. So therefore, they extrapolated that pasuk, that verse, is to mean that what? That they have to build the Beit HaMikdash in the second highest place of the Binyamin, not the first highest place. This is the reason why they did so. So therefore, we see, Rabbatai, that these two tribes were very, very super, super holy. By the way, there's also another Gemara that says like this, right? This is in Masechet Megillah. It says over there that there are several tribes that it's very, very hard to defeat them. Like, when you start making like a ruckus with them, they'll like defeat you. It's very hard to beat them. So they say, right, who are they? Binyamin and Yosef are two of them. What does that mean? Menashe, Ephraim, and Binyamin. Those two tribes, you don't want to mess with these guys, because these guys are like, if you start with them, they'll finish you. That's the way they are. And because they have a very, very great power, they have a very, very power of spirituality and the kedusha of holiness. So therefore, to defeat them in war is very, very, very difficult. They're very powerful. They have a great amount of power. As you know, by the way, that the tribe of Binyamin is compared to what? It's compared to the wolf. That's a symbol of the tribe of Binyamin, right? So, what is the character of the wolf, by the way, right? You have to know what that means. So first of all, right, says the Ibn Ezra that the wolf is a very powerful animal, like, it's a big warrior. They like to make war. They get together, they make like a pack of, they attack together, they hunt very, in a very cunning way. So Binyamin also were mighty people. These were like great people in the army also, were from Binyamin. Because they had the might of the wolf, the wolf is a very stubborn warrior. Very, very, very hard to defeat him. He will fight till the end, until you rip him apart. That's what they do. So, it's definitely, it's a symbol of might that they say, right? By the way, how mighty was the tribe of Binyamin? You want to know? Right, they say that what happened was that when there was a civil war in the first temple, time of the first temple, this was actually before the first temple was built. There was a very big civil war. So what happened over there? What happened was that the tribe of Binyamin fought against the rest of the tribes. Can you imagine? One tribe against 11 tribes. So this was like something very unusual, very, very strange. So what happened was, you would think, if all the tribes get together, their army is much bigger. They have much more, capacity. They have everything. They have mighty people. They have all kinds of types of people there. Everything. So they can easily defeat Binyamin. So what happened, right? It should be like a piece of cake, right? Like a walk in the park. But the truth is, right, that they had to fight 3 battles in order to defeat them. What does that mean? The first 2 battles they won. Can you imagine? Binyamin, they beat all the other tribes together. That's how mighty they were. So they were like very, very mighty people. Yeah. So what happened over there? The situation was like this, right? That there was a certain person who had a wife. Actually it was a pilegesh, right? A concubine, whatever. It's similar to a wife, whatever. So what happened was that he had some kind of a spat with her. Some kind of a fight, whatever. So she left and went to her father's house. She ran off. You know how it is, right? They go to the parents, they cry over there, they cry, they shed tears and whatever. So what happened was that this guy now went to get back his lady. So he went back to the father's house to retrieve her, Okay, let's go back, we'll make peace, I'll be a good boy from now on, don't worry, I won't make troubles with you. So what happened was that once the father saw that this guy came to pick up this lady, right, his daughter, it was his daughter. So what happened was that he said, oh, you came to pick her up. Oh, nice. Oh, wow. You want to get back together? Very good. Okay, so he said, you know what? Tells him like this, right? Stay over tonight. We'll have a nice party. We'll have a feast, like they're doing outside over there. Chinkali, Chinese food, everything, right, together. So let's have a nice feast, right? And then in the morning you'll go. You can go back with your wife, with your concubine, go back with her. So they said, okay, fine. So they ate, but it was already too late to leave by then. They had such a long party. It must have been a Georgian party, whatever. So it went so long, that it was already too late. It got dark. So they had to wait again until next day. So he told them again, right, let's do another feast. So they did another feast. So in other words, the first 2 days they weren't able to leave because they had too much partying going on. So what happened was that by the 3rd day they already left. They left. But it was already late during the day. It was right before night. So what happened was, in those days, it wasn't very good to travel at night because it was dangerous. There was no lights in the streets. There was no, everything was dark, pitch dark. It was like, very dangerous. A lot of bandits out there, animals, all kinds of things, wild animals, all kinds of stuff. So in those days, they wouldn't travel at night. What they would do is they would just find the closest place, like lodging place, city, whatever. They would go in there and lodge there. That's what it was. So what happened was that they passed by this one town, which was from Binyamin, this town. It was called Geva. Geva, by the way, is very close to in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem area today that we have, around there. So what happened was that they found the city and they said, let's go in here. We'll lodge over here, and then in the morning we'll continue traveling. So what happens is that they go in there, into the city, and nobody wants to take them in, for lodging. Nobody, everybody's cold-blooded over there. This city was, it was full with wicked people, they say, right? It wasn't a good place to lodge. Dangerous place, right? So what happened was that they couldn't find a place to lodge. So what they did was they lodged in the street. They put up some tent, whatever, something. They put up something ad hoc, some kind of makeshift thing, and they lodged in the street. They slept in the street. So what happened was there comes now, right, a group of thugs. Before the thugs came, somebody actually in the end, brought them into the house. Somebody in the end, right, came home late at night night guy, right? Somebody was working late. He found them in the street. They were already lodging there. He said, you know what? Come into my house. So he brings them into his house, this guy, right? The only one who wants to give them hospitality from the whole town. Can you imagine? The whole town doesn't want to give them. So what happened was they brought them in, and then there was a bunch of thugs over there, hoodlums, who surrounded the house. They saw that there were some guests that came in. There was a lady there, whatever. So they started to knock on the door, and threaten them. They said, you know what? We wanna play with those guys that you brought in, your guests. We wanna have some fun with them. So what happened was that they, in order to appease their criminal desires, so they let the lady out. They should do whatever they want with her. Can you imagine? They let her out. They attacked her. They raped her and everything. And by the morning, they did so much damage to her, she was already dead. Can you imagine? In the morning, they came out to see what would happen. Once the dawn broke, and she was lying on the floor dead. That's what happened. So, because of that, the tribes now were very angry at what happened, right? This guy, what he did was, the husband of this concubine, what he did was he dissected this lady's body. Can you imagine? Piece by piece. Cut it up. Put it into boxes and sent them out into all the areas of Israel. That's what he did. He sent them out, and what happened was that he said, this is a sign. Why am I sending you this body limb? Why am I sending you this? Because I want to tell you that all these limbs that I'm sending you, this lady was killed by some hoodlums over here in the tribe of Binyamin. So something has to be done to make justice over here, to get justice. That's what he did. He made something very shocking. So what happened was that when they got these males, can you imagine? Each one gets a limb.
The heads of all the tribes?
Right, exactly. Something like that, yeah. So what happened was that they got the males, and because of that, they decided to mobilize. The leaders of the communities, they mobilized, and they said, something we have to do something about this. This was a great travesty of justice. So what they did was, they gathered up all the Jewish people from sea to shining sea, north, south, east, west, and they got together in a place called Mitzpah. You know what this place, Mitzpah? This is in the north. It's in the north. It's in the north, way up there, in the snowy areas. So they got to go over there, and what they did was they made a decision over there with all the communities that we have to make justice over here regarding what happened. So, in order to facilitate the justice, first they sent a letter to Binyamin, right, to the tribe of Binyamin. They said, how did this happen in your territory, this kind of thing like this? A woman was assaulted like this, raped, killed, murdered. What kind of thing is this? Where did these people come from? How did these people come from the Jewish people, these kinds of people? These hoodlums, punks. So what happened was that Binyamin got that letter from them, that message, and they said, we don't know anything about it. I'm sorry, but it's not our business, There were some individuals that did some kind of a crime. What does it have to do with us? We're good people. So don't blame us, just because we're from the same tribe as them, that doesn't mean you can blame us. So they sent, another letter to Binyamin, to the tribe of Binyamin. They said, you have to, what you have to do is arrest these people and give them over to us, and we will punish them. They're punishable to death. So therefore, you have to arrest them and hand them over. Extradition, extradite them. That's what he told them. So Binyamin sends them back, write a letter. Sorry, but we're not going to do that. Yeah. So they said, but we're not your slaves. We're not going to do what you want. We have our own justice system. We'll take care of it in our own way. Has nothing to do with you. It's our territory. It's our tribe. What does it have to do with you? So once the tribes heard this, that the Binyamin was not willing to cooperate with this investigation and this whole thing, interrogation and all this, what they did was they mobilized for war. Right? This was a civil war that occurred at that time. This was the main civil war that they had. So what happened was they mobilized 11 tribes against one. Can you imagine? Totally uneven. But the tribe of Binyamin, they were so mighty that they were able to defeat twice the whole of Am Yisrael. They say, right, that what they had was, they had like a great skill in, they were like great slingers, so they were able to like sling with great precision, like hit a dime, That's what they had, like, they were great precision warriors. They were also very mighty people, very strong. And they had the koach, the holiness of Binyamin with them. So therefore, because of all these reasons, they were able to defeat the tribes twice. Can you imagine? This was a very big, great upset. But this testifies, right, to the mightiness, the greatness of the tribe of Binyamin. They say, by the way, that Binyamin has in it 10 families, right? So it's actually a very large and diverse tribe. It's not just like one type of people. That's why nowadays, by the way, you will find that the tribe of Binyamin is not like any other tribe. What does that mean? That basically tells us the Arizal, right? When it comes to the tribes today, who are these tribes today? How do you identify them today? Right? Says the Arizal that since they have the 4 banners walking in the desert, so the front, as we said, right, last week we mentioned it was Binyamin, Issachar, and Zevulun. I'm sorry, Yehuda and Issachar and Zevulun, yes? So these tribes, says the Arizal, these are the Sephardim, right? That's the Sephardi tribes. That's what we have today, right? In other words, the Jews who are in Spain, and in the Middle Eastern areas, those people. By the way, nowadays, these tribes, where are they located nowadays? Because, in Spain, you don't really have many Jews there. They were left, they were expelled over there, there was expulsion, there was Inquisition, so the Sephardi Jews left. But what happened was that they pretty much gathered in several areas, including like Morocco, and, there's also many of them in Iraq and Syria, and areas like this. So they say that Shevet Yehuda, tribe of Yehuda, is basically all over the world, but they're more concentrated in these areas. Because they came from Spain, a lot of the ones who were expelled, and they settled over there in these areas. There was also some who came to Poland as well, so many of them became also Ashkenazi. That also happened. And this is why, by the way, they say that the Hasidic movement, which branched out from the Ashkenazi world, they wanted to be different. So they say one of the reasons why they wanted to be different was because they were from the tribe of Yehuda. They didn't really fit in so well into the structure of the Ashkenazim. So therefore, this is why they rebelled against the Ashkenazi, authority, and they made their own customs, and they made their own, because they were more from the side of the Sephardim. And that's why many of the Admorim, right, that they had, the Hasidic world were from the tribe of Yehuda. They were like Sephardi descent. From Spain, these people were originally. That's the way it was. So anyway, but getting back to what we said, that we said these 3 tribes are from the Shevet Yehuda and Issachar and Zevulun, that those are the Sephardim. But there's also Sephardim that are also from the tribe of Binyamin. Why is that? What's the reason why? Even though Binyamin is really supposed to be with what? With Ephraim and Menashe and Binyamin, they are the other side, right? They're on the other side. So why is it that Binyamin is also included in Yehuda? What's the reason why? Because what happened was that when there was a civil war between the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom, Yehuda and Binyamin got left by themselves in the southern kingdom. And the other tribes seceded with Yerovam ben Nevat, and they made their own country, they made their own kingdom. So what happened was that since Yehuda and Binyamin got together in one country, so basically what happened was that they intermingled, and that's why, right, many of from the tribe of Binyamin are mixed in also with the tribe of Yehuda. Because they really have one society. They have one, because they were also together in Jerusalem as well, by the way, in Jerusalem. They say, right, that Jerusalem was mixed from Yehuda and Binyamin. These 2 tribes were the ones who dwelled there. Mostly, there was also from other tribes there. There was representative of every tribe. But in Jerusalem, it was basically Binyamin and Yehuda together. They were the ones who were there. So therefore, Binyamin and Yehuda have like a pact together. because they were together during the first temple, right, and during all these things. So therefore, there are many actually from the tribe of Binyamin who are also Sephardim. But there are also many who are Ashkenazim. Why is that? Because those are the ones who come originally from Ephraim and Menashe, and Binyamin is with them as well, because they're all the sons of Rachel. So therefore you have, from Binyamin, you have all kinds of various families that look different and have different customs. Binyamin is a very varied kind of tribe. They don't have one uniform custom or one uniform look or appearance. Some of them look like this, some of them look Sephardi, some of them look Ashkenazi. They don't have one uniform thing. So Binyamin is like a very varied, very, very diverse. So Rabbi, what we have is like this, right? That, as we said, that Yehuda and Binyamin were very, very, very special in terms of all these things, because they were very connected to holiness because of the merit of their mother, who was also a very holy lady, the mainstay of the home of Yaakov Avinu. And this is the reason why they were able to accomplish all kinds of things that the other tribes were not able to accomplish. So therefore, they were considered to be a very, very, very important element of the Jewish people. There's also, by the way, another thing which is brought down in the words of the sages, of the rabbis, that they say that these tribes, as opposed to Yehuda and Issachar and Zevulun, that their mission is more like on the side of kindness. Their kingdom is based on kindness more, but the kingdom of Binyamin and Yosef, Ephraim and Menashe, they're more on the side of judgment, on the left side, as opposed to Yehuda is on the right more, on the right side of which is the side of Chesed, and these tribes are more on the side of judgment. And that's why they say, by the way, I was told by my Rabbi Alav Shalom, Rabbi Alav Shalom, that if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, right, the Jewish code of law, Shulchan Aruch, you find over there that most of the stringencies that are written there, in other words, you have over there the opinions of the Maran Bet Yosef, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, and you also have the opinions of the Ramah, who was the Rabbi Moshe Yisraelish, right, who was the Ashkenazim. And they say that most of the time, 80% of the time, the Ashkenazim are more stringent than we are, than the Sephardim. Why is that? Because they are considered to be from the side of judgment. So therefore, they're stringent. He becomes religious, right? And he wants to know which side to go with. Depends on really, right, what your character is. If you're more from the side of chesed, of kindness, so then you're going to tend to want to be more Sephardi, because the Sephardim are more from that side. But the Ashkenazim are more from the side of judgment, and therefore if a person is very strict and very very stern, very austere, he wants to be like in this kind of Judaism, very very firm kind of Judaism. So therefore he connects more with the Ashkenazim. This is the reason. And it says the Maran Chida, by the way, says the Chida, that this is a continuation of this whole concept is a continuation of what it was in the history as well. What does that mean? That when we had in the Second Temple, we had two schools of thought, right? In the Halacha, which was what? We had Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. So, what does that mean? That they say that Bet Shammai was always also more stringent than Bet Hillel. Bet Hillel was more lenient. So what does that mean? That Bet Hillel was from David HaMelech, they were from King David, right? Which is more like what we call today the Sephardi side, So therefore, they were more lenient and the halacha was like them, but Bet Shammai was from the stringent side. So they say, right, that today, if you want to look at the world as Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, you're pretty much looking at the Ashkenazim and Sephardim. This is the division between them. It's the same division that we had in those times as well. So basically, right, they say also that because of this, that they had the character of judgment, Binyamin and Yosef, and which is comprised of Ephraim and Menashe, they had the quality of judgment. So therefore, this is the reason why, right, that they were appointed. Basically, their function, these three tribes of Ephraim and Menashe and Binyamin, was to have might. In other words, it's this coming from judgment. The measure of might of gevurah, right, which is something like being very strong and very powerful, being very dominant, very 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 aggressive. This was from the side of these tribes, because they were from the side of judgment, right? And the root of that was from Yitzhak Avinu, because Yitzhak Avinu was also from the side of gevurah, from the side of judgment as well. And therefore, right, we need both. In the Jewish people, we need both. We need both sides of judgment, and we also need the side of chesed, of kindness. That's why we have these two diametrically opposed tribes. We have on the one side, right, Yehuda and Issachar and Zevulun, and on the other side we have Binyamin and Ephraim and Menashe, and this causes the Jews to be balanced out. So what does that mean, Rabbi? That means that, says the Arizal, that the banner of Ephraim and Menashe and Binyamin, well, that's Ashkenazim. That's what he says. The Arizal says so. By the way, what was the Arizal himself? The Arizal himself was Ashkenazi. What does that mean? That his father was Ashkenazi, right? What was his name? Rabbi Tzchak Luria Ashkenazi. That's his name. His name was Ashkenazi. So what does that mean? He was Ashkenazi. His father was Ashkenazi, but his mother was Sephardi. So what does that mean? That in Judaism, the custom goes according to the father, it doesn't go according to the mother. You know, so if your father was Ashkenazi, you're also Ashkenazi. That's the way it is, you know. So therefore, right, says the Arizal, he himself says that the tribes of these three tribes, Binyamin and Menashe and Ephraim, he himself was Ashkenazi, and they are the Ashkenazim. That's what he says. What about the other two sides? There was also the side of Reuven and Shimon and Gad, and there was also Dan, Naphtali, Asher. So it says the Arizal, right, that the Reuven, the banner of Reuven is the Italian Jews. That's what he says. Interesting, right? We don't know too much about this community, by the way, today, because it's a very ancient community, and many of them left there. They don't really stay there so long. In recent history, they weren't there so much. So the Italian Jews, he says, are from the tribes of Reuven and Shimon and Gad, which is the third banner, and then the fourth banner, right, which is Dan, Naphtali, and Asher. He says he calls it Cataluna, right? Now, Cataluna is like a province in Spain, you know? So I don't know exactly what he meant by that, what that means exactly, because the Spanish Jews were really from tribe of Yehuda more, you know? So I'm not exactly sure what that means. Yeah, right, they were separate. Yeah, you're right, yeah. So explain, what's this?
It was like a Italian-esque influence by the Renaissance Republic, and they were seceding from the throne, the monarchy of Spain.
Right.
They were not Catholic. They were
right.
More like a Christian Protestant style.
I see. Right. Like Orthodox Christian, something, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's all Tuma. So anyway, yeah. So sorry. Yes.
Where were the camp of the Levi?
I'm sorry.
The Levi.
So what's the story with the Levim? Right. The Levim is like this. The Leviim were mixed into all the tribes. You understand? Every tribe had their own Leviim that were mixed into them. So what does that mean? When the land of Israel was allotted to the Jewish people, they did not get their own inheritance. They didn't get their own lot, their own territory. What they got was basically 60 cities, and these cities were quite small, by the way. You know, they were not like large cities, because if you have 60 large cities, that's already like a big territory. But these were like small cities. So what happened was that these cities were scattered all over the Jewish Israel, all of the Jewish areas, and therefore each of these tribes had their own Leviim that were with them in that place. That's the way it was. They were scattered. You know, as we said, right, that Yaakov Avinu decided to scatter them, the Levim, right? And Levi and Shimon had to be scattered. So therefore, since Levi had to be scattered, therefore they were everywhere. They were everywhere, and each tribe had a different family of the Levim that was living with them. That's the way it was. So they didn't really have like one central, you know, territory. That's the way it was, right? 60 cities, and that's where they lived. They had their own cities. That's what it was.
During the Civil War, were they involved?
Well, basically, you know, there's a lot of issues about that, by the way, because what happened was that they say that when Yerovam ben Nevat, who seceded from the union of Yehuda and that those tribes, what happened was that the Levim who were living in that area in the north, where Yerovam ben Nevat made his kingdom, they eventually left that area. You know why? Because he made it into idolatry. So therefore, they didn't want to be a part of that. And also what he did was, Yerovam ben Nevat, he also made another institution, right, which was also a very corrupted institution, that he allowed people who were not Kohanim to be priests on the altar, which is not allowed, right? It's a big sin. So since he did all these corrupted things, the Levim and Kohanim left those areas. They got out of there, and they went to Yehuda. So all of them, at a certain time, went to the south and joined up with the southern kingdom. Because the Levim cannot tolerate this nonsense. They don't tolerate that stuff. You understand? So throughout the history, you see that, right? They don't tolerate that stuff. So therefore, they left. They abandoned that area. That's what happened, you know? So that's the interesting thing about Levim. By the way, also another interesting thing I saw about the Levim. They say that after Yoshua bin Nun died, you know, once they came to the land of Israel, the Jewish people, it says, right, that there was also the Zikanim, the elders that ran the Jewish people after Yeshua ben Nun died, and those elders were good leaders. They kept the Jews in line, that they should be righteous, keeping the mitzvot, keeping the Torah. They say that those elders, it says in the Midrash, they were also from Shevet Levi. So you see, right, that there was also a lot of activity over there. So basically, Shevet Levi has always this function of opposing idolatry, opposing impurity, fighting wars, waging wars against this kind of thing. So what happened was, by the way, it's always an interesting thing that they ask about the Georgian Jews. Always people come and ask me these questions. They say, "Oh, why don't the Georgian Jews have Levim so much or so much Kohanim?" They have, but they have little. Like a few single families. So why don't they have so much? So the truth is, I was told by one of the rabbis that the history is like this, right? That what happened was that Ezra Sofer, who was gathering the Jews up to build the second temple, he was the leader at that time, Ezra. And Ezra was a Kohen himself. He was a Kohen. So what happened was that he went around to all the areas where the Jews were scattered, and he tried to retrieve the Jews to come back to the second temple. They said, let's go. We're building the second temple. Come on, let's go back. So what happened was that many of the communities didn't want to go back. They said, listen, we're very comfortable over here. We built already houses. We got our communities. We got shuls. We got Bet Knesset. We have synagogues. We have yeshivot. Now you want us to knock all this down and go with you again? So why didn't they want to go? What the reason is? Because they said, we have a tradition that the second temple is not going to last too long. It's going to be destroyed. They said, what's the point, We're going to have to go again, and then it's going to be destroyed again, and then go back again to the galut, to the diaspora, leave Eretz Israel again, and then come back again for Mashiach. Might as well just stay here until Mashiach comes, and we'll come straight, That was the claim they gave to Ezra. So they say, by the way, that what happened was that he went to Yemen, Ezra, trying to get the Yemenite Jews to come back, and they vehemently refused to come back. They stayed there all the way through, So what happened was that they had a big ruckus about that. So what happened was Ezra goes there to Yemen, and he tells them, "No, I'm building a second temple. You coming?" They said, "No, we're not coming." So they got into like a big rift, got heated up, whatever, heavy duty stuff, how it is, right? Got heated up, and what happened was that in the end, they say Ezra cursed them, the Yemenites. He cursed them because they didn't want to come back. He put a curse on them. And they also cursed him. They both ways went, whatever. So there was like a big rumble over there, with a big ruckus. He didn't want to come back. So the point is, Rabbi, that they say, right, he sent also emissaries to Georgia to bring back the Jews there, So the Georgian Jews also didn't want to come back. They were not interested in coming back. So what he did was like this, right? Ezra told them, you know what, at least if you don't want to come back, at least send me your Kohanim and Levim. He said, because I need them. He had a shortage of those. You understand? Because when he started to mobilize the Jews to leave the Persian Empire, a lot of Levim didn't come at that time. There was a big shortage of them. Levim, Kohanim. So therefore he needed more. So he told the Georgians, he told them, you know what, at least send me those guys. Levim and Kohanim. They agreed to that. And this is why they got left without these tribes. That's what happened. So they say, right, that afterwards, how did the Georgians get the Levim and the Kohanim that they had? They imported them from other places, right? They came from Iraq, they came from Iran, they came from all kinds of places. They're from Kurdistan, places like this. So they were imported from other areas, also from Russia as well, from Ashkenazim. They also came there. So all these communities came to Georgia. They had business. The business was good there. The economy was good there. Life was good there. So they wanted to live there. So they came from many other areas and they settled. But the Georgians themselves were totally emptied out of these tribes of the Kohanim and Levim. They were totally wiped out. So that's what happened. This is why the history is what it is. And not like, by the way, those people. There are some people who claim that the Georgian Jews is a very big myth. What they say, right? That they come from converts. What are they trying to say, right? That there was a kingdom called Khuzari. What's Khuzari? Khuzari was he was a Russian king, this guy, whatever. So what happened was that this Russian king, eventually they say, what happened was that he made a big kingdom in the medieval area, in the medieval era, like this about 1,000 years ago. He had a huge kingdom and lasted for 700 years, this kingdom, the Khuzari kingdom. So what happened was that in the end, a lot of the people from this kingdom converted to Judaism. They converted to Judaism, like mass conversions. So what happened was that a lot of people think, right, that people who come from the outside of the Georgian community, they think that these people who converted, they're the Georgian Jews. But this is a very big myth. Why is that? Why is that a big myth? Because the Khuzari kingdom was not in Georgia. You understand? It was actually pretty close to Georgia. That's why they make this mistake. Where was the Khuzari kingdom? It was in Russia. But you know where it was? It was like in the south part of Russia. Close to Georgia, not too far away. So this is why they make this mistake, and they think that the Georgian Jews are from the Khuzari. But the truth is, this is very, very false. Why is it very false? Because the Georgian Jews, the historical, material that they have, the Georgian people over there, the Georgian government, it shows that the Georgian people have been there for 2,500 years, more than 2,500 years. So it cannot be, right, that this kingdom was made 1,000 years ago, has nothing to do with 2,500 years ago the Jews came to Georgia. It's not connected. They came from the first temple. Are you talking about so those guys? I'm gonna get to that in a second. I just want to finish up this idea that what happened was like this, right? That actually this is very, very false. Why? Because there was always a big fight between the Khuzari kingdom and the Georgian kingdom. There was many wars between them. If you look in history, you will see that they were always fighting, like cats and dogs. These two. You understand? I'm sorry.
The Bulgarian kingdom.
From the maps that I saw, this was not Bulgarian. This was like southern Russia, like Caucasian area of Russia. Caucasus Russia.
The Black Sea.
Yeah, that area. Yes. Which is right close to Georgia, but just the opposite, right? Not only they were not Georgians, people, they had fights with Georgians all the time. There was wars going on between them constantly, day and night, right? They were fighting all the time. So this is not true, by the way. This is not it's a totally myth. Who usually says these kinds of things? People who come from the outside of the community, and they have all kinds of theories in their head. They don't have really proofs. They don't have evidence. They don't know the history of the Georgian Jews. They don't know where we come from. They don't know history. But actually, there is a book that talks about this. We know what book that is? It's called Mishpat HaKetubah. Right? Who wrote this? Rabbi Bar Shalom. Right? This is the son-in-law of Rav Vadia Shalom. Morin Rabbeinu. He's the son-in-law of the rabbi, and he's a big dayan. He's a big judge over there in Israel, and he wrote a book about ketubah, how to do all kinds of laws about the ketubah. There's a lot of laws. Can you imagine? This book is 10 volumes just about ketubah. 10-volume book, huge. It's a huge work. It's beautiful work, very nice work. Anyway, he writes over there. He traces the genealogy of all the communities, the Jews everywhere, Bukharians, Persians, Moroccans, Georgians, everybody. So what's the story? He says over there, right, that he probably spoke to some people who know about these things, the people who are from our community. So he writes over there that the Georgians have a tradition that they come from the tribe of Binyamin, the original Georgians, and also they came about 2,500 years ago, more than 2,500 years ago, to the Georgian area. That's one thing, and also he also writes over there exactly which families of the Georgians are Kohanim. He found out all the last names that they know that those last names are Kohanim. So he did a pretty good job over there to find out all these names. Same thing with the Bukharians, by the way. He tells you all the names of the Kohanim, every name which is a Kohen, Levi, which one is Levi. He knows. He got the whole thing down. If you look at it, you'll be surprised.
Where are the Bulgarians from?
Well, he doesn't talk about really that. I don't think he talks about that. But I heard from some Bukharian people who seem to know the history that the Bukharians come from Persia. Right. This was like several hundred years ago. What happened was that the king of, they say that the king of Bukhara came to the king of Persia and said, I need Jews in my country because my commerce is not going, economy is not so good. Give me some Jews, to get the commerce going. So he sent them some Jews, and looks like the Bukharians did a good job because they came out there with a lot of mullahs. They came out pretty good. Yes.
A lot of trade.
Yes. Yeah. They're all traders, all businessmen. These people, all business people, Until this day, they're business people, Bukharian people. That's their main livelihood, right? That's the way it is. So, that's the way it is, Rabbi. So anyway, getting back to what we said.
What are Georgians good at?
They're very talented people.
I asked I asked my mother this question. Actually, I didn't ask her. She told me. He said, "What are the Georgians good at? At making parties." So he said, but the truth is, right, that this comes to your question, right? It's a joke.
I don't mean to diminish my people, but outside of a couple of, I'm not even talking about myself, I'm just a putz. But outside of a couple of people here and there, it's mostly trash.
Well, you shouldn't call people trash, God forbid. That's not good to say that. I wouldn't go that far.
No,
but
I'm not talking about necessarily bad people.
Yeah.
Self-destructive people.
By the way, you should know that before the communist revolution came into the Georgian area, the Georgian Jews were actually very religious people, very devout religious people. I saw pictures of my great-grandfather, big long beard, down to here, looked like a Hasidic man, basically, like a rabbi,
This is 300 years ago.
Not 300, we're talking about 150 years ago. You understand? So what I'm telling you is that the history of the Georgian people is very, very devout Jews.
Black people were also good 300 years.
We're talking about people who are very observant.
How are you talking?
That's a good question, Jimmy. Good question. I'm also pondering the same question. Okay.
No, wait a second. The people that came from Africa.
Yeah.
What, you think these are the same people that are in Harlem?
Well, I can tell you one thing, that the Georgian Jews were very devout, very, very religious people. And when this actually started to change, two things changed this whole thing. One is that in the history of the Georgian people, they were not allowed to live in Tbilisi, in the capital. They were living in more of the villages, and this kept them more religious, because in Tbilisi there was a lot of culture. You could become more assimilated. So once they let them go into Tbilisi, they changed the law. That's when they started to lose their religion. That was one thing that made them lose it. And the second one was because of the communist revolution. They stopped, they closed down all the shuls, the yeshivot, everything. They were forced into, Amalek, Amalek. They became Amalek. So this was something which was, the coercion was very, very great. The danger was very great.
Ted Cruz, when he told Trump, he made a sarcastic remark. He said, the people from your city, New York values. But he was right in that. He made a very sarcastic and insulting remark about New York values.
Yeah, I heard it.
Of course you heard it. You know what he meant. New York values.
So anyway, Rabbi,
Best values in the world.
getting back to what we said.
Elvis Cruz, who is the president?
You should know, by the way, that
Nobody believes in God in this city.
I want to tell you something very important.
There's New York and there's America.
I know.
Yes. I want to tell you something interesting, right? That I want to talk about also the issue of how the exile of Egypt, the bondage started over there, the slavery, how the Jews were, pulled into this. It was like a trick that they pulled on them. But basically, you have to understand one thing, that what caused the Jews to go into slavery over there was actually from what? Because they started to lose their tradition. As the generations went along, when you're in a foreign country, the foreign culture influences you. You become less religious, less observant, and little by little, once every generation goes by, the Jews become less and less observant, and then something has to happen to shake it up a little bit, to change the equation, that the Jews should come back. The Jews have to come back. So they have to come back. Maybe. Okay, we're talking about that today with these Nissim. We're talking about that. Okay, so anyway, the Jews have to come back every once in a while. But what happened was that once the Jews started to lose their tradition, intermingle with the Egyptians, and intermarry, and all these kinds of things. There was all kinds of being together with the workplace and the entertainment, theaters, movies, all kinds of things. So the Egyptians started to hate them because of that. Why? Because they don't like, the host nations of the Jews. They don't like when the Jews become like them. They don't want that. They want the Jews to be, first they try to seduce you to become like that. But when you do, then they blame you for that. It's like a double thing. They get you from both sides. First they tell you, be like us. And then when you are, they'll tell you, why you like us?
I've seen it.
You understand? That's the way it is. So really what happened was that the slavery was because of this reason. Because once the Egyptians saw that the Jews were not really observing their religion anymore, and they were totally dissociated with that. So what happened was that they started to suspect the Jews, they were going to pass some kind of rebellion against them, to overthrow the kingdom. So therefore they said, right, that we have to do something to curb their desire to rebel, because they're taking over everything. All the good jobs, all the good businesses, all this, they have the property, they have real estate, this, everything. They're all over the place. We can't mess with them. They said we got to do something to curb their hunger, their appetite for success. So this is the reason why they had this idea of putting them into bondage. This was one of the reasons why. Because they said, if we don't, we're going to be defeated and we're going to be out of here. They're going to kick us out of here. They're going to take over everything. We're not going to have anything left. This was the reason why, and what caused this from the Jewish perspective was because they lost their Masorah, they lost their traditions, they lost their observance. And because of that, now the Egyptians saw them as fair game. But the truth is, right, that the Egyptians themselves also seduced the Jews into going into this. What does that mean? They actively were trying to convince them that their way was better than the Jewish way.
But the Leviim never did.
Yes, that's true. Again, we find the same thing.
What were they doing?
I'll explain to you what happened. What happened was like this, right? The Egyptians came to the Jews and they said, you know what? They said, you Jews are good people, God bless you. You worship God, you have good traditions, you're religious people, you believe in God, you have faith. But they said, you know what? We also have something good, you gotta learn from us also as well. What does that mean? Because they were idolaters, the Egyptians were idolaters. So how did they convince them to do idolatry? They said, you know what? It's like, they said, well, we'll compare this to like a kingdom. When you have a kingdom, you have the king himself. You have the ministers who are below him. Senators, congressmen, this, secretary of labor, secretary of this, secretary of that, all these guys, right? All these people. So they said that sometimes you have to give also bribes to these people, to pay them off, to do something if you want. Not only you give money to the king, you also have to give them also something. You have to give them also respect. They said the same thing with the heavenly kingdom. You shouldn't only give respect to God, but also the ones who serve him, under him. The angels, these kinds of the constellations. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the junior crowd. So they said, we know that better than you. That you have to also grease those guys. You got to get them also. Give them what they deserve. So they said, so therefore what you have to do is give sacrifices also, offer sacrifices to the ones that are serving God as well, under him, But for us, you understand, the Jewish people, this is not allowed. This is idolatry. What does that mean? That we're not allowed to serve God through an intermediary, some kind of angel, whatever it is, right? The constellations, that's the way the Gentiles do. But we're not allowed to do that. We have to Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. We have to be one God. We only go to him, nobody else. Nobody's in the middle. There's no middleman there. You understand? So therefore, the Egyptians suckered the Jews into going into idolatry, little by little, by telling them these kinds of things. You have to also serve the congressmen and the ministers and the secretaries and this and that. Not only God himself, you also have to serve them. What happens is, this thing degenerates. What I mean to say is that you start also giving offerings to the lower spheres, the angels and the constellations, but in the end what happens is that you totally forget about God. You don't even bring anything to him anymore. Little by little, right? First you give to everybody, and then what happens is that you forget God altogether and start giving to them. So this becomes like total idolatry, even without intermediary. I'm talking about you're only worshiping the lower ones. And this is what the Jews got suckered into. So therefore, once they got suckered into this is the reason why the Egyptians were able to enslave them. Because they didn't have the merit anymore of their tradition, of their Torah, right, which was what was protecting them. Regarding the Leviim, right, what happened over there? The Leviim got out of all this, right? They got saved from everything. Why is that? How were they able to save? They never got enslaved. They never were in bondage. So what happened? When Paro came to them, right, and said, you know what, are you guys also coming to work? Or only those Jews are coming. You Levites, what, you going to come Levites? What's with you guys? So the Levites told them to Paro, we're sorry, but we're like the priestly class of the Jewish people. We sit and learn Torah all day. We're priestly people. We're not involved in the mundane everyday affairs. Every nation has to have a priestly class. So they explained to him like this, and Paro understood that. Why? Because he also had that. His own country had that, right? Except that they were idolaters. But, the Jewish people, they have the priestly class. They told Paro, we're the priestly class. We cannot come and help you with your building, with your construction. We're not interested in that. We're serving God. So Paro left them alone. He respected that. So therefore, the Levites were never enslaved because of that. This is the reason why. In all the 210 years that there was slavery in Egypt, they were never enslaved, ever. You understand? So you see that from there, that a person who clings to Torah, clings to tradition, he's safe from all the troubles.
They weren't discriminated against?
I'm sorry?
Other Jews are slaves and they were not discriminated against?
We don't hear too much about discrimination, but the truth is, right, that when you're in the priestly class, you get you get privileges. Not only they don't discriminate against you, but they get privileges also. You get like a higher status. A priestly person gets all kinds of, priority treatment, VIP treatment. He gets all kinds of VIP stuff. So the same thing was going on over there. You understand? Even more so. So therefore we see from the Rabbi that it always is a proven thing, by the way. And this is what it says in Pirkei Avot, right? That what? Kol porek mimenu. Oh, right. Whoever accepts the heavenly yoke, they take away from him the yoke of the kingdom and the yoke of livelihood. So what does that mean? That when a person, this is the way the world works. If a person decides to take upon himself the yoke of Torah, meaning what? To sit and learn Torah and not to be involved with other things. So what they do is, now the kingdom leaves them alone. They don't have to work anymore. They don't have to pay taxes. They leave them alone. Everybody leaves them alone so they can serve God. Because when you're serving God, nobody can touch you anymore. You're untouchable. You understand? You're like, invincible. Because you're on God. You're working for Him. He's the boss. You're working directly for this boss. Nobody else can touch you. So that's the way it is until this day, by the way, That the Jews who are clinging to Torah, nobody can touch them. Nobody can move them from what they are. Because they've been trying already for 50 years in Israel to draft them into the army. But every generation they fail. Every year they fail. Why is that? Because you cannot get them. There's no way to get them. The people who are really studying Torah, you cannot touch them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't allow. Can you imagine? It's funny, yeah. What can I tell you? HaKadosh Baruch Hu never allows the ones who are serving Him to be touched by anybody. Yeah.
I'm waiting, baby. Who's curiosity? Anxiety.
Okay, get yourself together. We'll wait for you.
The whole world hates religious people for dodging the draft.
Right.
Little that they know that they're not dodging anything. God is dodging them from it.
Well, right, yeah, that's exactly it, But they can't get them. You see, they try every trick.
Sometimes we hear those son of with the beards.
Yeah.
Fight,
Yeah.
go to war.
Yeah, they call them parasites, Parasites, Parasitev, that's what they call them. But you see, you can call them anything you want.
They're not my family.
Wait a second. I actually learned something.
Yeah.
I also thought they were dodging, making up all kinds of
Right.
stories.
Yeah.
Not to go to war.
But you see, they're not touchable. You know why? Because all the kingdoms, we'll end this with this, Rabbi. All the kingdoms in this world are under the kingdom of God. So they have no power outside of God. Whatever God gives them the power to do, they cannot do anything else. So therefore, God doesn't give them the power to take those people who are serving Him.
But somebody has to
Understand?
fight.
I'm sorry?
There's a war when you're being attacked.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's a good question. So what's the answer to that? You know what the answer is? That the truth is that when the Jews were on a very high level, they don't need to fight anybody because Hashem wages the war for them. And by the way, that's what's going to be time Mashiach. In Mashiach, the Jews are not going to fight the war. When Gog and Magog, the all nations come around, Hashem was going to fight the war for them. The Jews are not going to fight. Why are they going to go out there with tanks? How can you go out against the whole world? You think physically speaking you can defeat the whole world? You cannot do that. So who's going to fight them? The only one who can defeat the whole world is Hashem. Understand? So really the war is not going to be, right, in time of Mashiach, it's not going to be with us. You think we're going to go out there and start shooting at them? There's no chance to beat them. There's billions of them. What are you going to do with them? They're like flies, man. They're all over the place. You understand? So the only way you can defeat an enemy like that is to rely on Hashem. Hashem will make the war against them. And we're just sitting there, and watching it on CNN, whatever, We don't watch CNN, but it's better not to watch us, whatever. So, you understand what So, the Jews who stayed with Hashem have been protected always and always and always. They say, by the way, it's an amazing thing. I want to end with this. It's an amazing thing, this Midrash says. That besides the tribe of Levi, they had the status, there's also one other group. You know who this is? This is a group of people who are studying Torah. In Jerusalem, the big scholars of Jerusalem, they say that what happened was that Nebuchadnezzar came, right, and destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, and then came other conquerors, conquered Jerusalem, conquered, and once Nebuchadnezzar conquered the Beit HaMikdash, they conquered Jerusalem, what happened was that these scholars were moved to Babel, they were moved to Iraq. They moved over there. So it says in Midrash, all the kingdoms that came after these kingdoms, all the kingdoms that came, Persia, Iraq, Babel, Rome, they all came and went. Greece, they all came, but they were never able to touch these groups of scholars that were sitting there and studying Torah. Nobody was able to touch them. And they say, right, that they're so powerful, can you imagine? That they will come back, when the time of the redemption comes, they will come back to Jerusalem and start studying Torah in Jerusalem. Just like we see them today. They are there. They're already there. You understand? Where these people come from? They came from Iraq. They came from Syria. They came from Morocco. All these people are studying Torah in Jerusalem. Where they come from? So says the Midrash that these people who were the Torah scholars of Am Yisrael, no kingdom, no matter which kingdom it was able to touch them. They stayed there studying Torah. They were not able to draft them, to take them into any army. Zero. Nothing was able to touch them. So you see the power of the Rabbi. That a person who clings to Torah and Mitzvot, especially Torah study, Nobody can touch him. That's the way it is. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen. God bless you. Thank you for coming.